It's Konflikt 47 week, and we have 3 amazing starter sets to be won. We will choose 3 winners, one from the comments on our YouTube videos, one from the comments on OnTableTop.com, and one from our Cult of Games members, so you guys get an extra chance to win.
Hello everybody and welcome to 3 Colors Up. In this one I'm going to be tackling the linebacker for the Allies faction for Konflikt 47, Warlord Games' own kit. And it's a really nice build and it just went together really sweet and very much enjoyed the build. However, we're going to be getting on to the paint now. And the paint, I kind of break a little bit from recent traditions if you've watched a lot of 3 Colors Up before, where I do introduce, or at least, I reintroduce a few extra little bits and pieces. There's some enamel work in there. There's a lot of chipping, a lot of weathering, and some varnishes that help things along, and a little bit of stenciling with some camouflage. So overall, I think the result is very interesting. It's going to be quite a long one, I believe. So sit back and relax. Give yourself a little bit of time to sit down and enjoy it. Of course, you can always skip through to see how certain effects have been done. But there's little point in rambling. I'll just let the video speak for itself. Hopefully you enjoy it. So let's quickly have a look at the linebacker that I've built. And you'll notice the pose is a little weird. Don't worry about it. We'll show you at the end what this is all about. So, built straight from the box, or from the box basically. Nothing special. I've left the clear part for the cockpit, or for the canopy window, off and allowed the cockpit to open. We're going to make sure that that's all done so we can get the internal detailing done in there before we put our glass in. Means we don't have to mask that glass or anything like that. It'll just slot in and then our plastic part can glue down. What I want to do with this model is do a bit of camouflage, but I have some stencils that were very kindly gifted to me a while back that I've never got round to using. I think I was meant to use them for Battletech, but they're going to be used for Konflikt 47 instead, and particularly on this linebacker. So we've primed it in black. We've used Chaos Black, although the Army Painter matte black will do the same job. And we're going to do a couple of airbrushing steps. So the first step is to take this black and sort of tone it a little bit so that it forms the black or the dark part of our camouflage scheme. And for the dark, we are using Raven Black from Army Painter's Air range. I've just started using this and just getting used to it. So I have that in my airbrush. And what I want to do is basically take the airbrush and sort of almost zenith it, sort of going top down and then side on more than anything underneath. Leave all that dark, really dark. So here we go, let's just get on with it. And you can see what I'm doing as well is focusing on certain parts, certain curves and shapes of the mech, just to make sure that we got like the most of the grey through at those particular points. So a little bit more and then we'll let it dry. So with the sort of dark grey, Raven Black even, all down, we can see that I've hopefully built up a bit of an interesting gradient on certain parts of the model while leaving the underside largely in the black primer. So from here we're going to start constructing our camouflage, and for the camouflage I'm using this sheet of ready cut or die cut stencils. I don't know how well you can see them under camera, but they're sort of a splinter pattern, and I was given these very generously by a member of our community, and I figured, well, now's the time to use them. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to pick out a few and just start to place them on the model. You can see there all the size of it. So for example, this stuff with like a long straight edge, I'm kind of thinking I want it to interact with the cockpit or certain lines of the model. So if I set that there, and lift the cockpit up, and then I can flatten it down a little bit, and then the cockpit will sort of snap back over the edge there. And I can start to play with the hundreds of shapes that are on this and just build myself up a nice camouflage pattern. So I'm going to pick up another one. And this is really putting these to the test. By the way, these are from Fallout Hobbies. So if you're interested, go check out Fallout Hobbies and pick up a set for yourself if you like the result that I get here. So this larger one's maybe a bit too much, but it could probably go on this cheek actually. So if I place it there, and then what I'll do is I'll manipulate it round a little bit and sort of press it in there, I think. With the stencils on, we'll have a brief look around at the pattern that we've got. I think it's going to be quite interesting looking with that in black and the rest of the mech sort of a more standard olive green. Now, these stencils don't really seem to enjoy conforming that much. Maybe I should hit them with a bit of heat. But because of that, what I'm going to do is the base layer of green I'm going to put down very lightly at first and then build it up over several layers. So the green we're going for is Militia Green, again from the Army Painter Air range. It looks like a nice base green to go over this black. So we'll be as careful as possible and as light as possible for several passes to get this down. With the green down and dry, we can see we are getting a bit more colour about it. Hopefully that has covered our stencils relatively well. I see some stuff just poking out where I really didn't want it to. But we're going to move on to our next colour, which is our top layer for our green. And for that, we're going to be using Army Green, again from the Air colour range, and again airbrushing it. So, same as before, we're going to do several passes to build the colour up. With our green in place, it is time to find out how badly we messed up our stencils. So let's start peeling. This one looks already kind of loose. So let's just take that one away. That's not bad. It's a little fuzzy, sure, but we're not asking for perfect here. We're certainly probably not going to get perfect, that's for sure. That's all right. That one's actually kind of nicer. That's pretty decent. Right, so let's get these off and have a look at the model once we have revealed our camouflage scheme. With all the stencils removed, we now have our fully revealed camouflage scheme. And all right, yeah, probably could have done a bit more, but there's a lot of mechanical detail and stuff that's going on the back of the model. And I wasn't as confident with the stencils because they weren't just adhering as tightly as I would have liked in certain places. Some of them lifted, but the majority of them sat quite nicely. And we've got a interesting take on a typical olive drab and black color scheme going on. And I think it looks quite charming. We might do something else. Maybe do a little bit of, if I'm brave, might do a little bit of shark teeth there just to give us a splash of color. Now that I've said it, that's basically a promise. So from here, we're going to move on to a little bit of simple weathering before we start to do any mechanical stuff. We're going to do some paint chipping on this. And I'm doing it at this stage because we've got a lot of silver and a lot of mechanical pieces that I really don't want to have to go over again once you know, I do some chipping, we'd have to tidy it. So we're going to do the chipping now. And for that, we're going to use, I hate pronouncing paint names, Brigadine Brown. Looks good to me. And you've seen sponge chipping before. This isn't going to be anything particularly fancy. So I have a big piece of sponge here, but I have a feeling that's maybe just a little bit too big. So let's just tear that down a little bit, and we'll just use that sort of smaller edge piece there. So let's dab some of that paint off. Let's make a mess of our tidy little palette over there. And as per usual, we're just going to pick out edges and probably go quite heavy on the chipping, I think, this time, because I really want this machine to look like it's been in combat for quite a while. It's quite venerable, it's seen a lot of stuff. And I think going heavy on the weathering is going to make it look a lot more interesting, a lot more visually appealing. So down around the legs are going to be quite heavy. Up around the cockpit, yeah, probably not as heavy, but we're still going to make it look worn and used. So we'll just carry on with this, do little bits here and there, and see what we come up with. With our chipping done, or at least the brown part of the chipping done, we can see a little bit more interest going on in here, a bit more of that sort of weathered, heavy used look. Slowly but surely, the effect is coming together. So we're going to move on to some metallic chipping now. So for that, we're going to be using some plate mail, and we're going to put that onto our palette over there. Now we're going to apply this without using the sponge, because we want a bit more accuracy with the silver. So how we're going to do that is we're going to take a brush, we're going to remove a lot of the paint off of it, and then, for example, let's look at the cockpit real quick here. And what I want to do is take the brush and just very carefully touch the edges of the canopy with it. Just like that. And what that's giving us is a real tight, accurate kind of chipping going on. And as I move around the model, this is going to take a bit of time. If you apply it into the middle of areas that have got a lot of brown chipping, it suddenly makes that effect look more recent, or it's a more heavy traffic zone on the model, is what I like to say. And by that, I mean it's an area that is constantly being touched or worked on or worn on, that sort of thing. So it's just going to be a case of going around the model again with this kind of tidier, tighter style of weathering. And what we'll also do is, once that stage is done, is go through all the other mechanical parts of the mech and paint them in, base coat them in the same metal color. So it's just a case of taking your time and just working in these tighter locations and making it as inconsistent but in the same location as possible. So it's thicker in some places, thinner in others, there's little gaps between it and stuff like that. And that's how you make this look a bit more convincing and a bit more interesting looking. So at this stage we have our metallics down, and we can have a look around and see the effect that we've got with our chipping and a few of our mechanical pieces all sort of covered in as well. So plenty going on, looks quite good, looks pretty interesting. While I'm waiting for all that to settle, and before I move on to a few washes and stuff like that, what I want to do is just go ahead and do some shark's teeth. And to initially start that, I'm going to use Brigade Grey, and I'm going to use a small brush to draw out the shape. So we'll put that on the palette. And what I'm thinking, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, I don't want to dwell on it a lot, but what I'm going to try and do is, let me get some paint here. Taking the bottom line of the machine gun position, so along here, along that straight line there, I want to take that as the base location for the top of the mouth. So my brush is a little bit stiff there for some reason. Maybe it's just excited. So it's excited I'm doing some freehand, and that's something I usually don't do. Hang on a sec. So let me properly try and explain what I'm trying to do. So we're going to take the line straight from there to this corner. I then think I want to curl it up probably around here and let it follow to about there. And then from there, we're going to draw it out in a big sharky smile, and then use the top of these 4 rivets on the chin as the bottommost location. So if I draw a line straight across these 2 and then let it curl up and meet the edge, that is the outline of the jaw on that side. Now what we have to do is figure out a marking location on the opposite side. So second rivet on the canopy, that is going to be our stopping point on the other side. And hopefully we can get the same level. So I'm going straight across here, and then we're going to curl up to about there, and then hopefully gently draw that line in to meet there. From there, we're then going to curl. What are we doing here? There's 2 rivets across there, so the meeting at the midpoint. So we're going to curl from this middle rivet and meet our bottom edge, and then from the top corner here, we're going to trace down about there, so that from the front angle at least looks fairly even. So what I'm going to do then is fill all this in with Brigade Grey, and then after that we'll move on to fill it out with red, and I believe I'm just going to use a dragon red for that. We'll say dragon red because it's a nice vibrant red. And once I have that done, I'll come back and we can start looking at painting the teeth in. Now I understand that this is probably going to be the same color as the teeth, or I might just go a matte white. But the idea is to get this base color down so that the red pops more. So as you can see, it's moved on a little bit. After the Brigade Grey base, I've put Army Painter Fanatic Resplendent Red. Then that entire shape was filled with the red. After that, I then halved or 2/3 the red with a bit of Raven Black from the air range. This just, I was looking at pictures of World War II fighters and stuff like that, and that's kind of the layout they go for. So we're going to return with our Brigade Grey to do the teeth. And it's kind of subjective here because I've seen pictures where they do different things and they work in certain ways. But I'm going to try it a way that I want to. So to do the teeth, we're going to start small at the back. And it seems that I need a little more water on the brush because I need the paint to be quite thin. So nice and thin. And what I want to do is carefully just do a whole bunch of little shapes. And what they're going to do is progressively get a little bigger as they progress. Something like that. And then it'll be the same on the bottom row, but the bottom row is going to mostly live in the red. as the teeth get bigger, they protrude more into the black. So this is going to take a while, but if you feel like doing it, I think it's going to be worth it for the end result. And yeah, it's just going to be a lot of patience and a bit of time. Plus, we have very simple base coats here that we can just paint over again if we make a mistake. So no harm in admitting if we make a problem for ourselves here and just carry on. So now I have the teeth done, and okay, they're maybe not the best or the tidiest, but what I've done is painted the teeth in. Then after that, I've tidied them up with a little bit of the Raven black and a little bit more of the resplendent red, just to bring that bottom line of the red up a little bit. And that sort of brings it more into the historical kind of side of it. That's the kind of style that they went for. It's maybe a little bit goofy, but from the front, that doesn't look too bad. Could be worse. Hopefully it won't matter too much, and you guys have got an idea of what I did, and yeah, that's it. So from here, I also went and took some of the Raven Black and just watered it down and put it into the two big searchlights on the top. I'm not going to mess around with lighting effects and stuff on these. I'd rather they were dull, because he's not going to jump into combat with these things blaring, probably. Plus we have other lighting effects that we are going to do at a later stage, which now we're going to move on to a gloss varnish. For this, I'm just using some Green Stuff World gloss varnish. Any gloss varnish will do. It's because I have the most of this. I've thinned it a little bit, and we're going to give the entire model a coat of gloss varnish with the airbrush. So, and this will give a good even coat, and that will allow us to continue on with the next things we want to do. Now we have our gloss varnish down, everything is ready for our next step. And for this, I wanted to try something a little bit different, something I've not really done before. Well, sort of, but not really. So I'm going to give it an enamel wash, and some of you that have watched some of these videos before will know that I tend to enjoy AK Interactive stuff. However, recently I got into the Villainy inks. These are from Grimdark Compendium. Excellent painter, and quite fun actually. I played with these a couple months ago and haven't really had an excuse to use them yet. So this one is Goon's Grime. It's kind of a nice sort of browny, kind of dirty sort of look. And I figured it would look good over this, and it would sort of hammer down our colors and play with our shading a little bit. So we're going to put some of that onto a palette here. And this is going to be an overall application, so over the entire model. So it might take us a while, but yeah, we'll see how we get on. And the reason we gloss varnished is that we're not going to tint the base paint colors. This is just going to go on and then settle in around all the little details and stuff like that. And then we can start to wipe some excess off again. It works the same way as the AKs. You can run it thinner if you want as well, and just use it as a pin wash. It's quite versatile in that way. Enamel washes are quite versatile, so we'll just go ahead, apply this all over the model, and see the result that we get after this. So I've broken in just a little bit into applying the wash, and as you can see on my palette cam here, I'm actually using some low odor thinner here, which is Terps, because I realized that the ink straight out of the bottle was far too thick, and applying it this way is allowing me to get a better result straight away. So just clabbering the model in it and then wiping it off is something I usually do, and then I realized, well, actually it's causing me a lot more pain further down the line, or a lot more work further down the line. So we're just thinning it a little bit and applying it a bit more like an artist's paint, just to make sure I get the result I want without too much faff after the fact. And you can see it's going down very well once it's thinned a little bit, and we're getting a good interesting effect from it. Now you're not going to see much of this effect until I matte varnish the model again, but I think you're going to get a decent idea once this is down. I believe I'm going to matte varnish after applying this wash anyway, so we are going to get to see fairly quickly the results. In fact, I'm probably going to end up matte varnishing this off camera just so I can let it all settle, because this might take a good couple of hours to properly dry, and I want to make sure it is completely dry before I move on with any other step. So the enamel wash is dry. I've also matte varnished, and I've used a AK Ultra Matte varnish on top of that, and that's given us this real nice flat sort of finish, and it's really highlighting all the weathering and the little chipping effects and all that sort of stuff. Now it's time to move on, and we're going to be starting with Army Painter Strong Tone, and Strong Tone is going to cover the weapons. I just hit my camera. It's going to cover the weapons, it's going to cover all the mechanical parts, and it's going to cover the inside of the cockpit, because we've not talked about the inside of the cockpit yet. What I did with that was took the silver for the mechanical parts and painted the control panel, and then I used Brigandine Brown on the pilot. Now I have a plan for that, so don't worry about it. There is method behind that. And yep, so what we're going to do now is just to start coating the inside of the cockpit here. Not too worried about skin or anything like that. We're just going, as I said, there's a plan. We're just going to go with our Strong Tone wash all on the inside of the cockpit. And this is going to be step one of a couple of steps that's going to make the cockpit a bit more interesting, but without going into mad amounts of detail. So we'll just get that done like that. So we'll shut that down for now. Then move on to our weapons and all the mechanical parts as well. And we're doing this after the matte varnish because I want the mechanical parts and all that sort of stuff to kind of stand out a little bit more. And that's going to give it a more of a satin finish rather than just a complete flat matte finish. And should look a bit more interesting. So we have like a change in tone and a little bit of weathering on what is essentially a fairly clean arrangement of weaponry and stuff like that. I will also paint the ammunition up here as well. That's going to go a gold color, and then I'm thinking blue tips for the ammunition itself. I need to briefly and quickly look at what colors I would like to do, but that's going to be the gist of it. I will tell you what colors those are going to be after I've done all this. With the wash down and the ammunition painted, we're briefly going to talk about the ammunition. So one side is blue tipped, which is painted in bright sapphire. The other side is painted yellow with glowing inferno. The casings are painted in true brass. And the tips of the rounds are all painted in plate mail metal. That's just to give me some interesting variant there in some colors. I know blue tip is typically a training round. I'm not too worried about that. You guys can tell me. I know what the yellow tip means, and if you know what the yellow tip means as well, I'm basing this on 30mm stroke 40mm cannon. Drop that in the comments if you know. That means I know you've watched to this part of the video. Excellent. What we're going to move on to now is beginning our glow effect, which is going to be on this Tesla cannon here and on our flight control stuff on the back and either side of the cockpit as well. So to start that off, we're going to be airbrushing some ionic blue onto those areas. Now hopefully my airbrush is set correctly, but we can check. It looks right to me. And it's going to be a case of just airbrushing into those shapes. And what we're trying to do is to let the overspray just sort of kiss over the edges of the details a little bit so that we're beginning that little bit of lighting effect. It's not going to be too bright, but we'll see how it turns out. With that blue down on the weapons, or the weapon, and our backpack sort of flight unit there, and the little cheek pieces, we're going to move on to brightening that up a little bit. So what we're going to be using is Air Matte White and a little bit of Speed Paint Medium. Now I'm going to mix this on my mat here, because let's get a few good drops of Speed Paint Medium there, because you'll be able to see it because my palette is actually white. And what I'm going to do is just mix in just a few drops of white. Then we're going to stir it all together, and we'll make a really thin white speed paint, pretty much. This might actually be too thin by the looks of it. That's all right. We can always add a little bit more white. I think we'll need it. Just a couple more drops like that. Then mix it all up again. That's kind of closer to the consistency I'm looking for there. Because what we're trying to make is a white speed paint stroke white ink kind of thing going on here, so that we can just use a bit of capillary action to dab this paint in. So let's return to our Tesla cannon here. What we want and what we hope to achieve is to let that white settle into the recesses. Bit like that. And that's how we're going to achieve a simple little glow effect. So we'll do that on the other side just to show you again how that's working. That speed paint medium is doing a lot of work for us, which is great. So you don't necessarily need to go out and buy yourself some ink or anything. If you have a bit of speed paint medium and some matte white, that's going to get you there. Make sure it takes in all those edges, so that looks all right. Then on our flight units, what I'm hoping to see here is, we'll try down here. So we'll just do a circle around it. Like that. So that's what we're aiming for, is that sort of heavily kind of washed white that just more or less entirely sits into the recesses. A little bit too much in that one. And in that one. So that's what we're aiming for. So we're going to do that on the rest of it and see what it looks like in the end. So with our glow effect done, I think we're looking pretty neat. Little subtle, but nice pop of color in there. So that's all good. Looks well to me. We're going to switch our attention to the cockpit. And there's only really two stages that I want to do on the cockpit. Now, the first thing I want to do is take some of our Brigade Grey from earlier, and I want to shove that onto my palette. And with that, I want to apply it as a dry brush. So let me get some there and remove a lot of it on my finger there, because I didn't think about a paper towel. So yeah, I know. What I want to do is dry brush all the front of our pilot here. And yeah, it looks messy, I know. Don't worry about it. But we're going to do that. And then after that, what I'm going to do is switch up a little bit. Still with the Brigade Grey, we're going to take a drop of it and we're going to paint in the instruments. Do a little bit in there, in there, in there, and a little bit in there. So that's all I really want to do in the cockpit, and you can see there on that close shot what we're aiming for is just that little bit of highlighting work. So we can close that and we can now see into the cockpit. At this point as well, I'm going to, let me see, get our gloss varnish from earlier. So while that Brigade Grey is settling, I'm going to put some gloss varnish onto my palette. And then, carefully, we need to water the brush down a little bit, carefully take some up on the brush, and we're going to fill in the areas of our big searchlights so that they're switched off but still look like they have glass in there. I'm only doing that because it's annoying me that they're still sat there looking quite matte. So with our cockpit then, what I'm going to do now is take a speed paint. I'm going with Ghoul Green for this one. Give it a bit of a shake. Drop some onto the palette. And let me see here with a little drop of speed paint medium as well. Just a drop. We'll mix those two together. And what I want to do is just coat the inside area of the cockpit with our speed paint mix. And if you're lazy, like me, what this is allowing us to do is build up a little bit of an atmospheric glow inside the cockpit, just to make it look a bit more interesting without having to go in and just do absolutely everything in there. Of course you can go ahead and do everything in there, but I really wanted a kind of a, I don't know how to describe it, a sort of a darkened instrument lit figure in here. Now, it's probably not going to look terribly good up close, but when that cockpit's shut and the glass is in there, that's going to look pretty decent. So what I'm going to do is let that dry. Once that's dry, we're going to put in the cockpit glass. Now, the cockpit glass doesn't necessarily need to be glued in itself. So what we're going to do is place the glass in, shut the cockpit, and just glue this part of the cockpit down so it holds it all together. One way to do it would be, let me see, I'm trying to think, a little bit of PVA glue along the base of the glass part, and that'll just hold it steady. So we're going to let that dry because it's just easier to dry it without the glass in. We'll stick the glass in, and then after that I'm going to do a couple of little touch-up steps, a bit more matte varnish on certain areas that look like they've started to rub through and are showing a bit more gloss on them. You can see in the top of the body there is looking a bit glossy from handling and whatnot. But after that, it's going to be the reveal. So here we have our linebacker all finished, and on a little bit of a diorama base that I decided to whip up using a Vogelspin with a oval base. I wasn't sure of the actual size of the bases being used for the kit because we got the preview sprues through, so there was no bases and there was no decal sheet. But I think the overall effect, making that base, giving the linebacker a chance to show off its posability and doing something a little more interesting as a centerpiece for an army, has really made this model stand out. And I'm pretty proud of how this has turned out, with a fairly limited amount of paints as well. Like, there's not tons and tons of paints being used, just a few basic colors, a little bit of effects, a little bit of airbrushing, and we've really got ourselves something that's going to stand out on a table. So, as always, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed this one. I've certainly enjoyed presenting this one to you. This has been one of my favorite mechs that I've painted in quite a while, and to be allowed to throw some ideas at Warlord and then they come back and say, yes, we like what you're doing with that. And that was the whole idea of showing this kit being as posable as it is, and getting the Vogelspin to be used as our Vogelspin, whatever. I've been told my pronunciation is terrible. Just to show off what this model can do with absolutely no kit bashing and no modifications required. But anyway, thank you again so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. And until next time, take care, stay safe, and see you again very soon.
It's Konflikt 47 week, and we have 3 amazing starter sets to be won. We will choose 3 winners, 1 from the comments on our YouTube videos, 1 from the comments on OnTableTop.com, and 1 from our Cult of Games members, so you guys get an extra chance to win.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now, and while you're at it, why not hit subscribe, and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it, go on.